going to war in Vietnam. All right, so we're going to be talking about some of the causes of the war in Vietnam, as well as some of the early battles and events of the war. We're going to see that early on, people really supported it, but as the war wages on, and as we go through this unit, we'll see that it continues to get less and less popular, to the point where just about everybody in the country is against it. All right, so here we go. All right, so U.S. officials, so they believe that Vietnam was important to stop the spread of communism. So remember, we had this policy of containment, okay, and much like Korea, Vietnam is split between the North and the South, okay, and so the North being communist, the South being democratic. But the problem is that the North is going to invade. Okay, so the Vietnamese were fighting against the French for independence. Um, Ho Chi Minh, he was the leader of the nationalist movement, was an advocate for communism. Okay, and he takes control in north part of Vietnam. Now, the reason why they're fighting the French here is because they had controlled it as a colony. Okay, so this was known as French Indochina. Okay, is what it was known before it was known as Vietnam. So in 1930, Ho Chi Minh helped form the Indo-Chinese Communist Party and worked to overthrow the French, so the colonizers. Okay, and they organized a national group known as the Viet Minh, and they united communists and non-communists to force Japan out because Japan is going to come in and try to take control. Remember, they're trying to be imperialists as well. But after World War II, obviously Japan is not controlling a lot of this, so they declared independence in 1945, but France wanted their colony back. And so what they did is they asked for the U.S. to help them. And we didn't want to, but we also didn't want communism to spread. Remember, like I said, we had that policy of containment. And we believed in what was called the domino theory. And the domino theory was that if one country falls to communism, it'll be like a domino where the rest of Asia does. So in this case, if Vietnam falls to communism, the rest of Southeast Asia would fall as well, because it was very tumultuous, kind of political and violence going on in that area. All right. So the French struggle against the Viet Minh. So the Viet Minh were known for using guerrilla tactics. So that's a hide and fight kind of tactic. So if you've ever seen The Patriot, so the way that the main character in that movie, he fights, he hides behind the trees and shoots instead of just open warfare. But they would use irregular troops who would blend into the civilian population, and so they're really difficult for regular armies to fight because they don't know who the enemy is. It's really difficult to tell the difference between a civilian and a soldier, and so this is something that we've seen as well with the more modern terrorist groups as they try to hide in with the civilian population. 1954, the French commander is going to order his forces to occupy the mountain town of Dien Bien Phu, and the Viet Minh surrounded the town and basically forced the French to leave. Also in 1954, the Geneva Accords will be passed, and basically this will divide Vietnam between the Viet Minh controlling North Vietnam and then a pro-Western regime in South Vietnam. Obviously, this is not going to last very long. 1956, elections will be held. So the U.S. protected the new government in South Vietnam. So No Dinh Diem was a pro-Westerner and anti-communist. He was the elected leader. That's him on the bottom there. And tension between North and South Vietnam escalated with basically the U.S. caught in the middle because we were supporting the South Vietnamese. So Diem refused to hold national elections. So Ho Chi Minh and his followers created a new guerrilla army known as the Viet Cong. Okay, and you'll hear this word a lot, Viet Cong. And they basically wanted to reunite North and South Vietnam. So President Kennedy continued to support South Vietnam. So we're getting into, he was elected in 1960, so we're getting into the early 60s at this point. So the Viet Cong's power continued to grow because many people opposed Diem's government, and basically, his government was really corrupt. They created strategic hamlets. Okay, so hamlets are like neighborhoods where they would have, like, the soldiers would control it. And then they discriminated against Buddhism, okay, which is the biggest religion in Vietnam. And so eventually Diem was overthrown and then executed. So this further weakened the government and basically forced the U.S. to get more involved because we can't have political turmoil in South Vietnam while North Vietnam is basically trying to gear up to unite the country. So at first, President Johnson was cautious with this, but he wanted to stop communism. So August 2nd, 1964, he announced that the North Vietnamese torpedo boats had fired on two American destroyers in the Gulf of Tonkin. And then there were similar attacks 2 days later. So Congress will pass the Gulf of Tonkin resolution, and basically what it says is that the president now has authority to take any and all necessary measures to repel any armed attack on U.S. forces. So basically, what happened was is the Congress gave their war powers to the president. So in the Constitution, it's Congress's job to declare war. Okay, but with the Gulf of Tonkin resolution, they said, we don't need to declare war. You do what you think is best in Vietnam. So after this, the Viet Cong began attacking bases where American advisors were stationed in South Vietnam. And then February 1965, Johnson sent aircrafts to strike in North Vietnam. Okay, so they're retaliating. So polls had showed that Johnson's approval rating had increased. People did want to get involved early on. Okay, there were some dissenters, but they weren't real vocal yet. But they did warn that if the U.S. had become too involved, it would be very difficult to get out, which proved correct. March of 1965, Johnson increased American involvement, and American soldiers started fighting alongside the South Vietnamese troops against the Viet Cong. Okay, so you can see here in this photo. This is the helicopters are dropping soldiers off into battle zones, and that's kind of what they did. So by 1965, 180,000 American combat troops were fighting, but that number doubled by 1966. So, which is crazy. So within a year, it was almost 400,000 troops. Many Americans believed that they could win in Vietnam, and they truly did believe it. But to take Viet Cong's hiding places away, U.S. planes dropped napalm. So napalm is really nasty stuff. Actually, it's a jellied gasoline that explodes on contact. So it's jelly, so it sticks, and then it's gasoline, so it burns. And so you can see in that picture that that's a napalm, that top picture there, that's them dropping napalm, and they basically burned entire villages. I mean, it was insane. And trying to root out the hiding places. Have you ever seen the movie We Were Soldiers? There's a really nasty napalm incident in that where the guy's skin basically just tears off. It's pretty gross. But it was pretty nasty stuff. And then also there's Agent Orange. So Agent Orange is a chemical that basically strips leaves from trees and shrubs. So it would expose some of those hiding places. So they sprayed it in that bottom picture. That's them spraying the Agent Orange. But the farmlands and forests were basically turned into wastelands as a result. And Agent Orange is like really, really terrible. So I'm going to show you some pictures here. So this is an effect of Agent Orange. Was the desired result. But a lot of kids have been born with like really crazy deformities as a result of the chemical composition of Agent Orange. And a lot of soldiers from Vietnam have come back with really bad health problems as a result of being exposed to it as well. So that was pretty nasty stuff too. So the U.S. underestimated the Viet Cong's strength, stamina, and morale, and so Johnson refused to order a full invasion of North Vietnam because he didn't want China to get involved, just like they did with Korea. Also, he refused to allow a full-scale attack on the Viet Cong supply line known as the Ho Chi Minh Trail. So the Ho Chi Minh Trail is this here. This was the map that was on the cover as well. But this right here is the Ho Chi Minh Trail, and this was basically the supply line from North Vietnam to the troops that are located in South Vietnam. But as American casualties increased, many Americans began questioning the involvement in the war. All right, so that's it for today. Don't forget to do your processor, and I hope you all enjoy the rest of your day.